to the next minute.
All
right, well, welcome everyone to the September ACEC City of Phoenix Liaison. We're happy to have you all here. We could do introductions for the people at the table, if you guys wouldn't mind, since we can't see your name.
I'm Al Field and Associates.
I'm Sierra Clement at BNN.
Bruce K, Nino and more, as usual.
Bill Link with Intellis.
I think we all know you, but it's always good to introduce. So, this month we have water services. September's our water services month, and we're happy to have the new director, Troy Hayes, to give the presentation today. And I kind of gave Troy a hard time about how he started his tenure, and they introduce a water shortage like a month after he starts, right? Or so. So just as a little reminder for everyone, not only was it stressful enough to run the water services department, but there's I think a little added stress now with the drought and the current situation on the Colorado River. So I think we need to be mindful of that for if you have projects with water services, that be a little mindful that these guys are probably under a little more stress than they need to be. So make sure we're doing our job as consultants to help them out in any way that we can. So with that, I'll let me get my notes up here on Troy. So Troy's been with the city for over 20 years, serving in a broad range of roles and responsibilities, including water treatment program manager, water quality manager, deputy water services director, and most recently assistant water services director since 2014. So before joining the city of Phoenix, Troy worked for a local consulting engineering firm, designing, planning, and constructing water and wastewater facilities for Valley cities. He has a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from the University of Arizona. I know that makes Eric happy. And by the way, chemical engineering is not easy, so that's impressive. Chemistry was one of those, okay, you got through it, good job. Let's move on to the construction side. So then he has a master's degree in business. He's a registered engineer in Arizona and Colorado and holds a grade 4 operator license in water treatment, wastewater treatment, water distribution, and wastewater collection, which I love having the hands-on department managers or directors. It's great to see that, Troy. Appreciate that. And he's a second generation Phoenix Water Services employee and loves spending time with his late father at the water service treatment plants when he was a boy. He and his wife have 2 children and love spending time outdoors. And Troy, I'd be curious to hear maybe what it was like to go as a boy to the water treatment in Phoenix, and I'm sure there's been so many technological changes and compared to just both the city size as well as what's happened. So with that, I'll turn it over to Troy to lead us in the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. I have fond memories of going around water plants. My first one I remember is probably 7 or 8 or so at the Deer Valley Water Treatment Plant, and they would have annual tours. And I went on the tour so much that I could give the tour. So when we decided what to do when we got out of school, it was a natural fit to go into the wastewater side of the business. So here I am. So let me see if I can share my screen to get this to work. There, does everybody see that?
Not yet.
Not yet. That's awesome.
Now we can, there you go.
That.
We can see there you go.
We're getting closer.
I got it.
All right, thanks. So what I wanted to kind of talk through today is kind of what Chuck kind of hinted at, is kind of where we're at with respect to water and the water quantity and some of the projects that we have going on to kind of help us with the shortage and the drought conditions that we live in. So the city of Phoenix has taken the long-term approach to drought. And what does that mean? Well, that means that we've developed a diverse and robust water portfolio that I will kind of go in and describe a little bit here in some of the other slides, and also created a culture of water conservation. And what the root of that is we've accepted and anticipated a hot, drier future for Arizona and specifically Phoenix. And so once you do that, you try to develop plans and things that will help lend itself as we go into the future. So the city of Phoenix's water supply is generally placed into two buckets, the Salt and the Verde River water and then Colorado River water. As you can see here, most of Phoenix's water there, it comes from the Salt and Verde River system, which over on the right-hand side is generally sent to the area of town that we call on project. So they're the area that's there in the green. The rest of in the light tan there is water that is served primarily with Colorado River water or other water supplies that we have that aren't associated with Salt River project. And I'll kind of explain those as we go forward too. So as I said, Phoenix received most of its surface water from the Salt and Verde River system, as we are members of the Salt River project. But one of the limitations of the Salt River project water is it's limited to on-project lands. So for the city of Phoenix, that means south of the Arizona Canal. So the Arizona Canal is the one that kind of goes in Phoenix by the Biltmore up towards the Metro Center area. But it stretches all the way from out in Mesa as it's coming in, all the way out to Glendale and Peoria. But so one of the things that we've done is since we've known shortage is around the corner, starting in the 1950s, Phoenix developed other water associated with the Verde River called gate water, in which we invested infrastructure, putting gates on top of the dam there, where we can utilize that water for demands outside of the project area. That was followed up in the 1990s with a project to add new conservation space on the Salt River. So there again, adding additional space on the existing dams that would give us water on both the Salt and the Verde River systems that could be utilized off project. And those waters we will use during shortage. This is kind of just generally describing our Colorado River system. Generally, the water is shipped in from the Colorado River, as everybody knows, through the Central Arizona Project. The first water treatment plant, the Union Hills Water Treatment Plant, came online in 1986. That was the first treatment plant in Arizona to treat Colorado River water. That was followed up by our Lake Pleasant Water Treatment Plant that gets water off of the Colorado system that came online in 2007. The Lake Pleasant Water Treatment Plant has a treatment capacity of about 80 million gallons a day. And it was anticipated with all the growth that was going to happen up there in the 2006-07 timeframe. As we all know, that didn't transpire, and the recession and the economic time there kind of slowed growth up in that area. The Union Hills Water Treatment Plant is a 160 MGD plant, and it's the largest water treatment plant treating Colorado River. We kind of look at kind of how we got into shortage. The water year in 2021 was really less than stellar. This map kind of shows the precipitation on the Colorado River Basin compared to the average precipitation over the last 40 years. And there's lots of red and orange. And what that means is there was less precipitation than normal. And in some areas, less than half of what we would have expected to see. The snowpack above Lake Powell, so that's the lake that feeds into Lake Mead, peaked in late March, as it usually does, but it was about 90% of average. But that generated alarmingly a low volume of inflow into Lake Powell due to what we speculate is due to the drought and basically soaking into the soil and not really coming down. So that was about 32% of normal runoff is what we saw. And so even though we were about 90% of normal rainfall up in the area, what we actually got coming down to use was about 32%. And that's really a result of increasing heat in our watershed and drying out the soils and the amount of water that's yielded from a typical seasons. And all those were a contributing factor really pushing us into the tier 1 shortage that's coming here next year. So you might have seen this graphic before, but this represents the Central Arizona Project priority system. And specifically there on the left is the city of Phoenix's numbers. So with the CAP system, each of their own priority systems and the times of shortage, higher priority waters are satisfied first, like municipal and Indian priority supplies located on the bottom of the chart, and the lower priorities are towards the top of the chart. And those are really the ones that will face restrictions as you come into first. As you recall, the Colorado River supplies comprise about 40% of Phoenix's water supply, with the remaining coming from the Salt and the Verde River supplies. Also, as you can see, is the Colorado supplies really make up of 186,000 acre feet is what Phoenix's total is. And that's including our M&I, our Indian leases, as well as our NIA supplies. On an average day right now, off project, our demands are about 125,000 acre feet. So we have well more than the supplies that we need associated with a non-shortage timeframe. A few weeks ago, the Bureau of Reclamation declared a shortage on the Colorado River for 2022, and because that's anticipated off of their water models that Lake Mead would go below the elevation of 1075. This is the first time in history that we've actually gone below this level in the lake. There was anticipated a few years ago that was a possibility, and you can see on there they're actually estimating a level of around 1060 or so within the lake. There's other tiers that were then driven off of other lake levels. At 1050, we can go into a tier 2A shortage, and 1045 tier 2B. And the lowest or the highest tier that the Bureau of Reclamation has identified as a tier 3, which would be at a 1025 level. So what does that mean under a tier 1 shortage? A tier 1 shortage would cut our supplies from 186,000 acre feet to about 183,000 acre feet. So basically just giving us a small haircut of losing about 3,000 acre feet. And as I said on the previous slide, as you recall, that our what we normally use on a daily basis to serve to our customers is about 125,000 acre feet of water. So you can see under the tier 1 shortage that this really didn't impact Phoenix, and it only impacted the amount of water that we can store underground. So we didn't really see a need to do any messaging other than some education to our customers. As I mentioned before, there's the tier 2A and the tier 2B at the different levels, but for the reality is the city of Phoenix really isn't affected until you get to tier 3. So under a tier 3 shortage, which is the most severe shortage, that Phoenix would be reduced to about 133,000 acre feet. Under that scenario, Phoenix would then rely upon Salt and Verde River water sources that I spoke about earlier. But it's also important to know that under the drought contingency plan, that all the tiers prior to this, the municipal customers would be mitigated under the drought contingency plan. So what does that mean? Is that all the water that would be cut, we would get that back from the state in paper water and water credits that we could utilize. A lot of what Phoenix's water portfolio is surface water, but it also has a large portion of groundwater. And that's where over the past few years, with respect to the drought infrastructure, we've been really focusing on drilling new wells. We had the partnership with the city of Tucson to store water down there to utilize their wells. We have the partnership with the Salt River Project to utilize their wells under drought scenarios. And so either developing our own infrastructure or utilizing others' infrastructure in order to access those pools. But it's really after the tier 3 that Phoenix would then go into using alternative supplies. So if you go back to our presentations starting in 2018 or so, Phoenix's issue with drought really wasn't a resource issue. We have enough resources to go well into the drought, for decades to come. It was really an infrastructure issue. And so what we did is we moved forward with the design and construction of some drought infrastructure, mostly with pipelines, pump stations, and pressure reducing stations to be able to move water for where we have water resources to where we potentially wouldn't. This also helps us in non-shortage years. It really allows us a lot of operational flexibility to move water to areas of town, to allow plant shutdowns, to allow for us to really make maybe financial decisions about how we operate the system. So our system is bifurcated, and what that means is that it's really, when it was designed and as it kind of evolved into two pieces. We had the Salt and the Verde River system there in the green, and that system was really developed, starting back in the 1950s when we built water treatment plants with Carollo engineers at the 24th Street water treatment plant, and then follow that up in the late 50s, early 60s with the Deer Valley water treatment plant. And then, as I said earlier, the Union Hills water treatment plant. And so there was some connectivity between the two sides, but really not of any level that we would need to be able to move that. What the issue was is if you go far enough into the drought, it really put into question of how we would serve the area in blue, which holds approximately 400,000 people that would receive Colorado River system. And what it really lacked was the ability to move the water. And so, as I said, what we came up with is a large pipeline and pump station coming out of the 24th Street water treatment plant, as well as the Deer Valley water treatment plant. That infrastructure included a 75 MGD pump station at the 24th Street plant, a 66-inch PCCP line that goes from the 24th Street plant up to about 32nd Street in Bell. The infrastructure that we have up in that area around Bell would really allow us to move water where we needed it to go. We had an existing 48-inch pipeline that tied the two together. And so the combination of rehabilitating the 48-inch pipeline and putting in a new 66-inch pipeline really gave us the ability to move a large amounts of water. The other one we have is a pump station at the Deer Valley water treatment plant currently. That size was adequate. That was about a 30 MGD pump station, but there was a bottleneck up between Thunderbird and Greenway. That pipeline needed to get upgraded to a 42-inch. We also had a pump station up at Deer Valley Road and Central Avenue that allowed us to move water east and west. And associated with all of these pump stations, there's large pressure reducing stations that would allow us to move water the opposite direction. As I said, it would really give us a lot of operational flexibility to move water wherever and whenever we needed to, whichever way in the town that we needed to go. Currently, we're on schedule to complete all of the construction associated with the drought infrastructure by early 2023. That includes the large transmission mains, as well as the pump stations. The only one that's lagging a little bit is the Deer Valley side. Like I said, it's already there. It was an upgrade of the system. That project is scheduled to start in early 2023. So well ahead of any issues that we think that we would have to utilize large volumes of water associated with the Salt and the Verde rivers. As you've driven up the 51 going north, you'll see a 66-inch pipeline sitting along the preserve there. That was a lot of work that we had to do to get community buy-in, as well as those that had real concerns about us putting in infrastructure up the freeway. So as you drive that way, you'll see about 11 miles of 66-inch pipeline sitting along the side of the road. Construction is going well. We have split that into two phases. We had south of what is that would be Shea would be one project, and then north of Shea up 32nd Street up to Bell is a second project. The southern part was designed by Black and Beach, and I believe the northern part was by Stanley. And so it allowed us to do simultaneous designs and construction in order to meet the timelines that we had. These are some pictures of the 24th Street water treatment plant pump station that are underway. As you can see, they're in the initial phases of getting the initial wet wells and all that poured. That's in some land that we have just west of the treatment plant and north of, I guess, south of a park that's there. We also did extensive water quality testing. One of the lessons that Phoenix learned a long time ago, mostly from challenges that the city of Tucson has, is if you are changing the water source or changing directions of the water source, there's extensive water quality testing that needs to happen. We're doing this in conjunction with Corollo engineers, in which we are pulling out pipe segments from the northern sections of town and putting Salt and Verde River water through it. Luckily, before 1986, in that portions just north of the Arizona Canal, that was all served by Salt and Verde Rivers back then. It's not since the late 80s and early 90s that we've actually switched over to Colorado River. So what we're finding with these studies and the analysis that we've done, that we shouldn't really have any water quality concerns associated with changing the water sources. And as we go into cycles where this becomes a little bit more normal, the customers really shouldn't see any issues going forward. Phoenix also has been pushing water conservation. We had the mayor at the time, Thelda Williams, enacted a water ad hoc conference conservation committee, which they came up with a lot of recommendations that we are implementing to help basically put conservation in the forethought of everybody's view. And what you've seen from Phoenix over the past 3 years is a lot of advertising and a lot of pushing conservation messages. And what we've seen over time is our customers really adapting and embracing a desert lifestyle. What we've seen mostly is people adapting and changing their outside water use. And so really going away from grass. The amount of homes that we have with grass is completely different than what you saw in the 70s and 80s. The green line there shows the water use per capita per day. That was up around 140 gallons per capita per day. And that was driven down to the mid 90s or so. We had a little bump back up in 2020, which we call the COVID year. And we really can't explain that. What we anticipated with COVID was a water reduction and less water use because businesses and all that were turned down. And what we actually saw was a 10% increase in water use across all of our categories. So I don't know if that was the cleaning of the houses or cleaning garages out or whatever they were doing, but there was a lot more water that was used in that time frame. The other one that you saw over time is the blue line, which is the population. So the population of Phoenix right now is about 1.7 million people. And the funny part about that, even though we've grown from, what is that, like 1 million people back in 1990, we've added 700,000 new residents. Over that time period, we actually don't use any more water. So we are treating and delivering about the same amount of water over that time frame as when we started. And like I said, so that's really showing how our customers have adapted and are embracing the desert lifestyle and the conservation messaging. So I guess my takeaway from all of this is that Phoenix is prepared to drought. Drought is a very serious situation. We're working with our partners in the state as well as with the other basin states to come up with strategies on how to slow down or put off or completely stop drought conditions. That's what one of my things. I have to hop off here at 9 o'clock to go meet with DWR about some drought issues that we have to work through. But we believe that putting on this infrastructure and being able to tap into the water resources that Phoenix has developed since the 1950s, really in anticipation of drought, of getting additional water resources and water supplies that can be used as we're into shortage, have really put us in a really good position to go well into the drought, for decades to come. And with that, I can take any questions.
Yeah, I had a question. This is Al Field, and I just wondered, I noticed that even though the Agua Fria and New River pass through the northern zone, it appears that Phoenix doesn't get any water from either of those sources. Is that true?
Yeah. So if you go up there, most of the year it's dry. They're actually dry rivers most of the year. It's only when we get storm water. And so some of the things that we're doing lately with SRP is that we're doing studies about rebuilding Bartlett Dam. That's an initiative that we have really to help with sedimentation issues that we have on Horseshoe Dam. And so with that, the partnership that we have is we're looking to expand to get more space on that side. What we really see with climate change, both and locally on the Salt and Verde River system, as well as on the Colorado system, is you're going to get extended periods of dryness, but then really wet periods. And kind of what we saw this winter, right? It's just abnormally wet. And we need to have the infrastructure in place to catch all of the water that comes down in those periods. What we've seen this year, as well as other years when it gets really wet on the Salt and Verde River systems, is it overwhelms the dams that we have, and they have to release. And so you have water actually flowing down the Salt River then. And so the thought is if we can get additional infrastructure up on that side, we would be able to store that water and hold that for beneficial use as well. But yeah, the other rivers that we have are mostly dry.
So Troy, this is Chuck. Does that include raising any dams or adding a new dam potentially on the Verde or Salt?
Right, so that would be building a new dam on Bartlett that's larger than the one that's there now.
Okay, so just increasing the volume just at one lake.
Yep.
That would be nice. I hate to see the water coming down with the Salt
But
River, you know.
as everybody knows, a dam project will be somewhere, 15 to 25 years from now. Trying to get permitting and everything else associated with that. So it's the beginning of the process, and at some point in time, the citizens of the valley will benefit from that work that we're doing.
Yeah, that was an impressive presentation to know that really there's no impact to us at any level.
And each city is a little bit different based on their water situation. Like I said, Phoenix is in a unique situation because we had the resources, in the 1950s and the 1990s to invest in the infrastructure. Some of the other cities don't necessarily have that. One of the things that's to Phoenix detriment, though, is we are not really of a size that can be 100% redundant on groundwater, right? So in the summertime, I'm producing about 400 million gallons a day with each well sitting about, what is that, 2 or 3 MGD. You would need hundreds and hundreds of wells in order to get up to our capacity. So it's really not feasible. And that was really a conscious decision back in the 80s that Phoenix went away from its well program to go back to a more sustainable surface water and really storing the groundwater for drought type conditions. Because once you pump the groundwater, it doesn't come back, right? So it's really saving that water resource for a time that it's really needed.
And are there any other questions for Troy?
Yeah, I had a follow-up. This is Al again. My understanding is that the Agua Fria feeds the Lake Pleasant, and we don't get any water from Lake Pleasant except CAP storage. Is that it?
All right, so actually the CAP operates the lake, and the Lake Pleasant Water Treatment Plant actually sits on the Waddell Canal. So there's a canal that connects the lake to the Colorado River or the CAP system. And so they actually flow water in and out of the lake. So they store water. So that would be store water in the winter and release it in the summer to create a hydropower.
Right.
So they run it both ways. So actually there is water in and out of that. So whatever water that is gained, it just goes into the system.
But from the Agua Fria system, we don't get anything.
Not directly, no.
Okay.
They have a water treatment plant up there.
But it's for CAP.
All right, are there any other questions for Troy? I have one. Has the drought has it impacted any of the other sides of your department, either water line construction, or have you had to focus? I know this project has been planned for a long time, this drought resistance. Yeah. Has there been any other impacts to you guys as far as?
So we've had a couple. We had some challenges with the 48-inch pipeline that got caught in Mexico. It had a production plant on the other side of the border. And so when they closed the borders, we had pipes that were stuck. So we had to work with the State Department, and Kiewit was our contractor at the time to really work on getting that loose. We've seen a little bit of lag on lead times, trying to get equipment and things like that associated with our construction, as well as price increases, which I'm sure you guys have all experienced as well. A little bit of price increases associated with things that we would normally get. Ironically, we're finding it difficult to find a small diameter, not, I guess medium diameter copper pipe. 1 inch and 2 inch copper pipe is at a premium, which we use for service lines. So that's been a little difficult. So I would say most of it's supply chain. We have every once in a while, some issues with some drivers associated with chemicals and things like that. So it's been driver issues and supply chain issues is what we've really run into. But luckily to date, we've been able to work through all of those issues, and it really hasn't been a significant impact, other than a couple of sleepless nights, but not too bad.
That's good news. All right, any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Troy. We appreciate your presentation. It was great, and it's good to hear that despite the news, we're doing okay here in Phoenix. So that's great news. So I'll turn it over before we get out of here. Does anyone have any announcements? Eric?
Yeah, so good morning, everybody. Yeah, so I also wanted to thank Troy for that great presentation. I teased Troy a little, being that when I was interim director, right? The joke is, well, water was all fine when I was there, and then he takes over, and then all of a sudden there's a drought. So, but no, all joking aside, Troy's a great asset to the city and is doing a great job as director. So thank you, Troy, for all that you do for the water department and for the residents of Phoenix, me being one of them. I am appreciative of being able to turn on the tap and flush the toilet, and it all does what it's supposed to do. So, but we have a couple announcements, and I did put in the chat for those of you that are more interested. One of the things that that I learned when I was interim director was kind of a lot of the stuff that Troy was talking about, right? As far as kind of the previous planning that the water department had done over the last 50, 60 years. And it is incredibly impressive, the foresight that previous directors in the city had to plan for situations like this, right? When you get to a tier 1, or hopefully not any further than this. But so the water resource plan is the link that I put in the chat there. It's a good read. I will say it's a good read for engineering types. I don't know that my mom would enjoy reading it very much, but for the people that are on the call here, it's got a very good detailed history of decisions that were made over time to put us in the great position that we're in right now. So just a little plug there for both Troy and the water resource plan. As far as announcements, of course, we want to make sure that we are sharing with you upcoming projects that might be of interest to everyone. So for that, I will turn it over to Heather Roy, who's one of our contract specialists, and she can share with you some of the upcoming projects.
Good morning, everyone. Right now, we've got advertised a booster pump station, 10A-B1, and Cave Creek Lone Mountain water line connection. It's construction administration and inspection services. It's for the water department, and it is being advertised now. For the water department, we've got a Deer Valley water treatment plant, finished water pump station, and chemical facility rehabilitation and refurbishment. This is going to be a construction manager at risk services, and that'll be out on October 7th. We've got a couple of aviation projects, Deer Valley Airport blast pads. It's a re-advertisement, engineering services. That will be advertised this Thursday. And then the Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport, Terminal 4, infrastructure, vertical and horizontal, transportation modernization phase 1. It's also a re-advertisement. It's a design build service, and that will be out on this Thursday also. So that's all we have up for the moment coming up.
Great,
So,
thank you
yeah.
for that.
Yep, thanks, Heather. Wanted to just make sure that we're communicating when projects are coming out. Of course, right, there's still the design and construction procurement newsletter that will get you some of that, same type information. But these are always great opportunities for us to share with you what's either currently out or will be out in the immediate future. So, and I think that's really all that I have, Chuck.
All right, well, thank you, Eric, and good luck on the United Way campaign for the city of Phoenix, going on till what, the end of October, I believe, October 15th or 23rd.
Yep, mid-October, correct.
All right, Justin, do we have any updates on roads and streets? I think everybody's pretty familiar. That's next week. We're all getting ready. It'll be great.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody is sick of hearing about roads and streets at this point. There always comes that cutoff, but I'll do it one more time because we're all friends. Yeah, so please don't forget, we have Roads and Streets live and in person next week, October 6th, 7th, and 8th at the El Conquistador. We still have plenty of registrations available if you'd like to come, and we can also help out with some of those hotel rooms, and we can also help you out with some booth or sponsorships if you'd like to do that. So we try to leave that open and flexible for everyone. We also have our golf tournament on the morning of October 6th. It is Par Wars, may the course be with you. So if you really want to have a good time, I'm going to be Princess Leia. Amerigo over here is going to be Han Solo. I mean, at least just come and laugh at us. So anyway, we do have one foursome left. If you are interested at all, or if you just want to be a single player, we will match you up with a great person. So I think that does it for me. Eric, thank you always for being here and making your fellow city employees uncomfortable by spying on them. Troy, thank you so much for your presentation today. And Chuck, as always, you're a wonderful chair. So I'll hand it back over to you.
All right. And the Par Wars, I didn't catch the golf course. I think I missed it at the beginning. What's the golf course location so we can go out and have fun? The La Paloma. All right.
And if you want to have a really good time with us, we are doing a pre-golf event at El Charro. So anyone who's golfing with us is welcome to come down. Food is on ACEC Arizona. So if you're interested, come on down and hang out with us.
Sounds like a great time. I'm really looking forward to next week after the hiatus we've had. It'll be great to see everybody again. It feels like it's been years, and just 2020 just seemed to drag. It was no fun, as we all know. So I'm glad it's over, and I'm glad we're back to being in person. So thank you, Justin, for arranging, and Amerigo for arranging, getting all that done. I know it was a lot of work, and you've spent your summer really putting all that together. So thank you. With that, that's it. That's all we have. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Next month, ACEC City of Phoenix will be public transit, and we'll have Jesus Sapien on board, or someone from his department, to give us an update on transit. And we know there's a lot in the Prop 400, 500 continuation that is transit related. So we'll look forward to hearing from him, and have a great week. And we'll probably see most of you next week.
Travel safe, guys. See you soon.
Bye.